Hello, everyone, and welcome to VOD of Consciousness with Sientir. I'm Sientir, and that is a freaking huge turtle. Like, look at this turtle. This turtle is enormous. Oh, it's little eyeballs right there. If they ever go back to Cantha in Guild Wars 2, which I actually think would be really cool, I would like to see them explore gigantic turtles. But I'm looking for an Illidus of the Empty Palm, because he, I think, has a skill that I want. Now that should be up in this direction, so let's go ahead and exit out to this area. I am in Luxon territory, which I don't often go in. This is something that I think is really important to consider. I don't talk about much. This guy, by the way, will be like, yeah, I'm not talking to you, you're a dirty Kurzick. Why don't you find a Kurzick merchant? This is something that they did in this game that is an interesting conceptual idea. Excuse me. The hiccups are not the interesting conceptual idea. They're just a weird reflex. But one of the things that they did in this game is, in factions in particular, is they had this idea of making each area kind of its own thing. Or they had... Let me rephrase this. There's a split. Okay, so you have 4 distinct areas of Cantha. Of Cantha. You have Xingzhe Island over here, where my mouse is. Then you have Kaineng City, and then you have the Eckerwald Forest and the Jade Sea. Now, the issue is that the Eckerwald Forest and the Jade Sea are designated specific areas for the 2 different, well, titular factions of the game. The Kurzicks and the Luxons. Each one has kind of their own flavor. The Kurzicks is predominantly what you would have seen in this channel. They are kind of ocean-dwelling... Or the Kurzicks are kind of in forest-dwelling, kind of very Gothic-inspired. Okay. And... Cool, this is free. And anyway, the point that I'm getting at here is that they have a certain type of aesthetic. Now, the aesthetic here for the Luxons is that of kind of nomadic piratey type characters. They're more nomads than pirates, I would say. But they have kind of a sailor sort of aesthetic. They're playing in that same space as pirates to some extent. We don't want to go to the Dragon's Breath. That sounds bad. Any enemy called the Dragon's Breath sounds like something I want to avoid. We just got Oni'd. Where do you think you're going? Okay. Seriously, this is just a lot of Oni. This build ideally wants one more skill to help manage energy, which is kind of insane to say, but it's true. I think there might be... there's command stuff that would do it. Let's see. Always... No, not that one. We can go for the eyes, obviously. Maybe there's a leadership. Actually, what this bar wants is it friggin' wants to wastrel collapse you into awe. Which looks like a weird hammer. Yeah, right here. Awe. If it hits a knockdown foe, that foe becomes dazed for 13 seconds. Like, that's super strong. I think you could make a case for a strong hammer build. That was not me knocking it down. That was psychic instability on my friend. But anyway, as I was saying about the Kurzicks and... Okay, I'm not going to finish that sentence. It doesn't end well. But the Kurzicks and Luxons is that ArenaNet decided to play up the factions by having them have different areas, which kind of means that you cut out around 30% of the map, I would say. Maybe not quite that much, but it certainly is a very large portion of the map that you would generally not explore, and they make it very uncomfortable. There's no connections between the areas, except for kind of a weak one at the beginning and another one at the end. This is what we need to go after here, right here. Is there another? No. Well, of the Profane is one of those skills that's really strong. It prevents enchantments, which are a major buff type. It's awful for elementalists to be in one of those, because they really want them, but neither here nor there. But the decision to do that split was, I think, a mistake. And the reason why I say that is because it really, really heavily segregated the lands. I think that if there had been more connections between them, it would have helped. I believe the boss that I want's in this area, incidentally. Yeah, Illidus of the Empty Palms over there. Suffering and Elite Suffering. There's the monk. Healing Breeze is one of those skills that's not actually very good. It looks really good and it sounds really good, but it's not really good. Actually, this is something that I like in this game that I really wish they did in Guild Wars 2. It's not significant. This is just like one of these weird things. But you see my health bar is kind of like slowly draining over time. These pips of regeneration mean a certain amount of health lost per second. The way that they do it in Guild Wars 2 is they do it in ticks, where like every second or whatever, like Bleed or Torment or whatever, will proc a chunk of damage, rather than doing that damage over a specific period of time. And the consequence of that is it can feel very jolty, if that makes sense, where the health, rather than kind of flowing down in a smooth incremental sort of way, kind of drops in a very awkward and chunky way. The result of this is that, at least in my experience, is that it kind of feels like it feels really sudden, the health drops. I wanted Way of the Empty Palm. What is this? Suffering from hexagon. Yeah, Iron Palm is an assassin skill and not a skill that you bring on a non-assassin, probably. Because you're trying to spec too many things at that point. What this skill does is it makes your offhand attacks cost no energy, which is potentially really useful. Anyway, that's the last of the random elite skills that I was looking to capture. Or at least the last of those elite skills I was looking to capture. Where are we at for time? 9 minutes or so? Oh, Luxon Pendant. Cool. So, just to kind of go over this a little bit more, I don't... let's actually do something interesting. Let's go to the character select. And I think Baratus probably has that area mapped better. Because I really want to demonstrate this, but I don't have the map necessary to really do it on that character. So let's see. Baratus. You're so reliable most of the time, and yet you fail me here. Okay, let's just... Where are you? Why are you in Bergen Hot Springs? This is inexplicable. What the heck are you even doing? Oh, this is a runner build. This build is not designed to fight. It's designed to just get away. I do not honestly know why he's on a runner build, but Maybe you have. Eventually, I'm actually going to do like plot stuff on different characters. Okay, yeah. So this character has more of the area. So what you can see is here's Echovold Forest stuff, right? And then these are PvP zones right here. So this overlap for Aspenwood and the Jade Quarry are kind of like defensive versus offensive. So the Kurzicks are defensive over here, and the Luxons are offensive, and vice versa over here. So the Luxons are defending, and the Kurzicks are attacking. But what you can see is, I'm not sure if this is 100% all of the outposts, but man, this is super, super pushback. Like, Kurzicks super have all of this territory. But what you can see is these lands right here that aren't fogged up, they kind of don't abut the Jade Sea. They're off kind of deep in these lands. And then you've got this overlap area of the Harvest Temple Unwaking Water Zone. You can get a Unwaking Waters Luxon if you are Luxon faction. So if you have enough Luxon faction to be able to get there, you can do it. I feel like I probably have some characters that have this even better than him, but it doesn't matter. This is good enough. These areas right here, as you can see with the Luxon areas, they are also not abutting, right? There's no real connections. So if you're going to the Luxon lands, you are in the Luxon lands. If you're going to Kurzick lands, you are in the Kurzick lands. The only overlap is these specialized PvP zones and this zone for like the final mission, or the third to last mission, but the Unwaking Waters mission. And otherwise, you have them split through Pengmei Valley, which is like the only area of like, I don't know. It's got some similarities to some area in the Luxon area, so I shouldn't say it's the only area that's got green, but fundamentally what you're running into here is there's like no overlap between the zones, and for the most part, the zones do not reflect the combat going on between the Luxons and the Kurzicks, only on specialized quests. So this whole factions idea really falls through because you don't feel it. You don't really experience it. They say that it's happening. There's some quests to emphasize it, but you don't really get that back and forth. It just creates inconvenience between, oh, if you're a Luxon, you can't use the Merchants and Leviathan Pits or Seafarer's Rest or Eridan Barris or Terrace or by Posse Reach or Breaker Hollow, but why are Kurzicks going over here? This isn't their area. They don't have quests here. Like, all of these quests are going to reward Luxon faction. All of this stuff is going to reinforce being a Luxon, except for this whole alliance mechanic of who owns hounds. Like, it's a really interesting idea and concept, but what they needed to do to sell it is just not sufficient. That's kind of what I'm saying. And segregating this, look at how much map, right? Like, if I zoom out, you can kind of see like just how much map is chopped off. Like, here's a bunch of map for Kaining, right, up through here. So that's maybe twice the size, or fairly comparable in size to these zones. If we look over here at Xingzhou, that's also fairly comparable. So it's like maybe 25% of the world map that you just don't, you're not given much story reason to explore beyond getting to Kavlon or House of Zuheltzer. Or actually just like Zashivro's Channel and Altrum Ruins, I think maybe. And that's kind of the extent of where you're encouraged to go. And the problem with all of this is it really made a game that was frankly smaller than Prophecies feel even smaller. Like, if you look at those quantities of explorable area, and I'm just kind of doing some of my Guild Wars 1 review stuff here, I guess. But if you look at how much world map there is here, like, there's just so much world map. Like, friggin' post-searing Ascalon is enormous. The Shiver Peaks are huge. There's so much stuff throughout all of this. And don't ignore that. That's expansion content. But like, Kryda is huge. This character doesn't even have Keswick's Peak. And like, you can see all the way over here into Maguma, a bunch of this stuff is kind of underexplored. The Falls area, I don't even have. There's Radasum, by the way. That's Proto Radasum. It's super early before it becomes a thing. That's also expansion content. Like, this character is missing a bunch of zones here. If we want to see this, but what you can see is it was smaller, and then they even made it so you don't have to explore stuff. It has like half the missions. If you look at right here, there's 25 missions in Tyria, and I don't know how much this guy even has. There's 13 in Cantha, and you can skip one of them. So there's just like half the missions. The world map is smaller. So it just created this fundamental problem. Yeah, you can see like this character's gotten reasonable on cartography. There's the Henge of Denravi, Riverside Province, all of this space in here, the Delesio Seaboard, there's Sanctum K, so much stuff in the Shiver Peaks. Down here in the Crystal Desert, there's just so much area. Like, this area is absolutely enormous and it has no reason to be. But you can just see how much area there is here. And a lot of it's kind of not used even. And it just feels like it's so much less space in factions, in part because they don't even encourage you to visit like a quarter of the map. So anyway, that's just some of my thoughts on that particular topic. I guess there's a new friggin' build of the game available. Well, I guess we're going to sign off on Baratus. We'll be back on Carmen Angelis, but until then, Baratus says bye.